It's a positive film. It has heroes and villains, and that it essentially is a fun movie to watch. It's been a long time since people have been able to go to the movies and see a sort of straightforward, wholesome, fun adventure.
From A New Hope to The Force Awakens, the Star Wars universe has a continuous and evolving impact within popular and mass culture. From movies to toys and an extended universe, how did George Lucas's 1977 space opera turn into an all-encompassing institution? Within a critical media lens, let's embark on a journey to discover why Star Wars matters.
Well, I think that the two titles of the film says it all. The first title given to the film, Star Wars, then the second title which Lucas gave to the film once Star Wars had become the umbrella title for the whole sequence of 9 films that were originally intended. A New Hope was the title given to what then became Episode 4, the original Star Wars. And the 1970s were a very difficult decade up to around the time that Star Wars was released in 1977 for American society as a whole. The Vietnam War was grinding on from the 60s into the 70s. There were anti-war protests. The situation was looking more and more grim in terms of any success. And finally, the war was ended in the early 70s, with America certainly not having won that war. There was a sense of loss and of considerable soul-searching in America about what had gone wrong. The civil rights movement of the 1960s was having to look at itself to see what it had achieved and what was left to be achieved in the 1970s. The political situation was bad. The Watergate scandal erupted, and eventually the president was impeached and had to resign. The energy crisis occurred. Ordinary people were being affected. Oil and gas were destined to become scarce, they were told. Their way of life was going to have to change. And there was also a kind of hangover from the 60s, the decade of love and peace and drugs and freedom. Some of that didn't work out so well, and people were suffering from the liberties that they'd taken in the 60s. So it was a rather miserable first half of the 1970s for American society in general. And people, I think, were looking for a change. They were looking for something optimistic, something exuberant, something that would show them some kind of hope again, even in just a cinematic form, for society, for them in general. And A New Hope did that.
I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you.
You're who?
I'm here to rescue you. I've got your R2 unit. I'm here with Ben Kenobi.
Ben Kenobi? Where is he?
Come on.
Because George Lucas based it upon his dreams of, the old serialized movies, the Buck Rogers kind of movies, but also the Seven Samurai, the Japanese folklore that he was very interested in. So it was a combination of that kind of archetype of the Japanese folklore and the kind of, the swaggering serialized movie swashbucklers that he was interested in. So that was a mashup right there that he was promoting, and it was something that I think they didn't quite grasp because there was no stars in it as well. Like none of the people in it were seen as stars.
Han Solo. I'm captain of the Millennium Falcon. Chewie here tells me you're looking for passage to the Alderaan system.
Yes, indeed. If it's a fast ship.
Fast ship? You've never heard of the Millennium Falcon?
Should I have?
It's the ship that made the Kessel Run.
Well, when it was released, it was the film culture at the time was completely different. Throughout the 70s, directors like Lucas's contemporaries and friends, Francis Ford Coppola, and even to an extent Steven Spielberg, had sort of taken away power from the studios and were creating these very personal films. That's how they described them. Personal, very director-driven films. They'd really picked up on the idea of the auteur from cahiers de cinema in French film. And so that had been really driving American film, these very grim, character-driven films for basically the decade. And what Star Wars did, along with Jaws, came along, and it still offered, you know, a personal film in the sense that George Lucas, that was the kind of film, those were the kind of stories he grew up on. So he's still very personally connected to the story, but I think it was something that someone could just be dropped into and immediately be taken sort of whisked away with. There was nothing like it at the time.
You're all clear, kid. Now let's blow this thing and go home.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's at its basic level, Star Wars is entertainment. But I think part of the reason it's endured and reached out to so many people beyond sort of the primary base of younger people is that people can read the underlying stories about good versus evil, like the whole concept of the Force being like some kind of religious motivation. I mean, it doesn't even have a denomination. Whatever religious entity you recognize, you can equate with the Force. You know, the dark side is the dark instinct of humanity. I mean, we certainly saw the dark side in action in Paris this past weekend, right? So I think the archetypes, the deep cultural, you know, it's what you know, they call about the collective unconscious. You know, Jung talked about the collective unconscious. I think it's the idea that all these archetypical occurrences and thoughts are in a movie like Star Wars, the whole franchise, and they've been very successful in working on that, and I think people just respond to it in many different levels.
The characters and situations were archetypal, but also definitely American. The Western frontier, the young farm boy yearning for a life of adventure, the cowboy space pirate with a heart of gold. These were American types as much as they were archetypal characters from fairy tale and from myth. And American experience was drawn on. The experience, for example, of America with its allies in World War II. The aerial dogfights at the end of A New Hope are drawn from movie depictions of those battles in World War II. And that, of course, was a victorious and successful and good war by the definitions of American society. So the film drew on American types, American experience, American history, on the history of a fairly recent at that time good war in the 1940s, World War II, which had ended successfully for America and its allies. And above all, it was fun.
The weight of Star Wars within our shared cultural psyche is undeniable. To dismiss the original film or its sequels and prequels as only entertainment is truly void of critical understanding. In the end, the themes and meaning of a galaxy far, far away is so very close to home.